Welcome to another episode of the Teaching Canada's History podcast. I'm your host, Brooke Campbell, and today we are speaking with the finalists of the 2024 Governor-General's History Award for Excellence in Teaching. Created in 1996, the award recognizes innovative and impactful approaches to teaching Canadian history. For more information, visit canadashistory.ca/teaching award. Today I'm talking with Connie Shea, a high school teacher in St. John, New Brunswick. Thanks so much, Connie, for speaking with me today and telling us more about your Hidden Histories Project.
Thanks, Brooke. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, why don't you tell us more about this project and, provide a bit of an overview and maybe some of the key steps that your students undertake as they're working through this project.
Sure. I'm happy to do that. My students created what is called the Hidden Histories Project. It was a project that actually was in cooperation with the local Boys and Girls Club. They approached us with a program that was designed to reach high school students and increase their awareness of systemic racism. And as part of this program, throughout a period of 6 to 8 weeks, they had people come in and interact with us, and we talked about systemic racism and its impact on society. But at the end of that time, they wanted us to create a kind of a culminating activity that would reach beyond the walls of the classroom to show what the students had learned and about systemic racism, and that would have an impact on the larger community. And Hidden Histories was the result of that. So my students decided that they wanted to, being a kind of like it was an Indigenous Studies history class, they wanted to shine a light on people from marginalized communities who are typically left out of the mainstream historical narrative. So they created a series of 10 postcards that featured stories and events and individuals from marginalized community here in our region in New Brunswick and Wabanaki Territory. So stories from Black history, from First Nations history, women, and the 2S LGBTQIA communities. They basically created a postcard that was two-sided and to be distributed in our city. So on one side of the postcard had student artwork, which tried to tell the story of the person or the event. On the back was a write-up, which the students wrote and researched. And it also had a QR code where people in the community would find a postcard, could use their cell phone and link to a website where they could find more information and resources, as well as leave their own feedback about what they thought about these stories that, were really cool and interesting people and events, but not really well known. So in a nutshell, I guess that's what the Hidden Histories Project was. And it was an amazing experience for my students and for me as an educator to take part in.
That's wonderful. And I love the community element and that engagement that your students were able to get by having people respond and react on that QR code. When we take a closer look at this work and at this project, can you share more about how your students were able to engage with the historical thinking concepts and really strengthen those skills and that work throughout this project?
Absolutely. So the historical thinking skills were embedded in the project right from the start. First, students had to identify significant individuals and events that would meet the criteria of being historically significant for the community. They had to find resources and sources, both primary and secondary, to find out about them and to do write-ups. But overall, too, this project asks important questions about whose stories get told and about why are the people that we found and events that we found people who did amazing, incredible things. Like one of my favorite stories we found, it was about a gentleman named Edward Mitchell Bannister, who was born in 1828 in St. Andrews, New Brunswick. He was a very well-known and important Black artist who went to the States and at the 1879 Philadelphia Exposition won a gold medal, and his work hangs in the Smithsonian in Washington, D.C. to this day, and it hung in Mike Pence's office when he was Vice President of the United States. But on the side, Edward Mitchell Bannister was also an abolitionist and conductor on the Underground Railway. And so this story, like when we uncovered it and our students found it, I never heard of this gentleman my whole entire life, even though literally I grew up 45 minutes from St. Andrews, New Brunswick. So questions about why don't we know these stories, and about the importance of how history can be used as a narrative to shine a light on issues concerning social justice and inequality. So the students got into that. So it's about perspective and about the ethical dimensions of the past and how history can be used to kind of to tell full and complete stories that are diverse and represent everyone in the community. So historical thinking kind of from start to finish in many different aspects kind of was deeply embedded from start to finish.
When you think about this project, but also your classroom and your teaching practice at large, what resources do you tend to lean on, and how do you use them?
I'm a big primary source kind of teacher. I do use primary sources as my main go-to, as to both reinforce kind of the events and understanding to deepen, but also for students to explore different perspectives on the past, and that how different takes on what happened in an event shape our understanding of it. And it helps us understand how power works in society. And so we use primary sources quite a bit. But we also use, surprisingly, I don't know if this is typical for history teachers, like current events. Like we look at news happening, what's going on today, and connect it to the past. Like most recently, I remember teaching about, Weimar Germany and the hyperinflation. And so talking about inflation that we're experiencing here in Canada and the US. And so students can connect directly and see how the issues that we examine in the past reoccur. They're not over. And that's sometimes things, whether it's human rights issues or if it's economic and political issues, they tend to resurface. I do use videos a lot, documentaries that I find online. But really, I'm a big fan of primary sources, photos, newspapers, quotes, political cartoons, to help students kind of deepen their understanding of the past, and to use it as evidence to construct claims that demonstrate their understanding.
You've shared how this project goes beyond the four walls of your classroom. It really has this community component to it, and elements of sharing knowledge with others, which makes me think about the impact of this work. Can you share more about what impacts you've seen on your students' learning, and what some of those outcomes may have been for your community?
In terms of the students in my class, it was very, I know I did a lot of student feedback. They wrote about what they thought about the project and their role in it. And so this is from kind of the things that they said is they found it very meaningful in a couple of ways, that the diversity of the people and the events that we were studying reflect their own diversity. That I teach in an uptown urban school, and my class is just as diverse as the people that we profile in the Hidden Histories Project. So they connected with that element. They also connected with the idea of there are these really cool people and events that happened here, and that we don't always do the best job of promoting ourselves and our own history. And especially, I don't know if that's a maritime thing, being from New Brunswick, or a Canadian thing as a whole. And that these really cool and amazing things happened, and that we should know about them. And it made them feel like the quotes about being proud to be a New Brunswicker. But also, they got the point about, they would question, why haven't we heard this until now? Why are we as a class and as students the ones bringing it into the classroom? We are this is not something that they had ever heard before, and why? And they asked those tough questions and understood the relationship, and how history can be an important tool to kind of uncover those injustices and to add diversity to the school curriculums, which is needed, as we all know.
Yeah, it's wonderful to empower your students to see that, and in such a hands-on and tangible way to learn that.
And if we look at the community responses, sorry to interrupt. No, similar lines in that there was a QR code on the back of the postcards where people can go directly to our website and leave comments, and same kind of ideas about, why don't I know about this person? And this is such a cool undertaking. Students I've never seen a project that was so authentically engaging for students. They came early to work on this. I still get emails every once in a while from students who the artist I mentioned, Edward Mitchell Bannister, he was recently featured in a documentary on HBO about significant Black artists, and I got an email from someone I worked with and said, "Look, this is our guy we looked at." So the community response has been overwhelmingly positive. So it's been they were very proud of what we did, I think is the best way to describe it. And the students really took ownership. They got the mission from day one, and because it was public. That was an important element, I think, too, of what I try to build into my teaching, is that this is an authentic experience that we were sharing with the public. It wasn't just, something written on a test that I'm going to read. This is something that is going out to the larger community, and that they liked that idea, and they took ownership of it, and they nailed it with their work. They did an excellent job.
I love how proud you are of your students and just singing their praises and what they've done. It's so lovely. Thank you so much, Connie, for sharing the Hidden Histories Project with me today and providing a little bit more insight into what your classroom looks like.
Great. Thank you very much, Brooke. It was nice to talk to you.